So now that you've done your cityscape, you now know how to turn squares, rectangles, into three-dimensional cubes. Now we're going to move on to a room interior. And we're going to see how we can make that room interior look dimensional, create that idea of space. That's what this unit is all about, creating space in our drawings, in our artwork. So we're going to create a room that has dimensional space, and we're going to be filling it in with furniture that looks dimensional and realistic, right? Realistic perspective. That's really important. So this is what your finished room is going to look like, what you're seeing on this slide. But we're going to start with those basic things. Rectangles, maybe a square, parallel lines, vertical lines, horizontal lines, all the things that we've been learning about. And we're going to use those to create our room. So you're going to need a ruler, you're going to need a pencil, and probably an eraser. Okay, I want you using it. It doesn't have to be a ruler, it can just be any straight edge. This is a fairly long step-by-step. I want you to hang in there as we go through it. I may have to break this into parts. The application that I'm using is limited to 15 minutes. So if it ends, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's done, right? If I have to break this into parts, I will do that. Okay, so I'll label each one of those. And then at the end of this presentation, I'm going to be introducing your project, your ideal room perspective drawing that you're going to be doing. That's your 100-point project for this unit. Okay, again, you can stop the video at any point, hit that tab bar to pause the video and get your step completed, and then move on to the next slide. Okay, so the first thing we need a few things in order to make a perspective drawing. What are those things? Everybody should know. We have our vanishing point, we have our horizon line, and then we need perspective lines. And we need some sort of shape to start with, right? Whether or not that's a rectangle, a star shape, square. Those are the kind of the building blocks that we begin with to make our perspective drawing. Okay, so your vanishing point, now this is an 8.5, you can see the frame here is your 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And again, it's landscape format, not portrait. It's wider than it is tall. So make sure you're doing your drawing that way or you'll run out of space. So your vanishing point, and you don't need to measure it, right? You can just look at it visually where you think it might go. If you don't have a ruler, that's okay. Don't let that stop you. So your vanishing point is going to be, if you can measure it, that's great. About 2 inches from the top of the paper, and then in the center from left to right, and that's at the 5.5 inch mark, right? Your paper is 11.5 inches wide, or not 11.5, it's 11 inches wide, so 5.5 inches is your center. So everybody put that mark in now for your vanishing point. Okay, now you can draw diagonal lines from each corner to your vanishing point. Okay, these are going from the corner. Nice straight lines. And then measure from your vanishing point, again, about 2 inches. And you're going to put a couple dots in there. And these are going to be the corners of your back wall that you're going to create for the back of your room. So go ahead and add those dots in now. Then you're going to do 2 vertical lines from those points. And just try and get them parallel to the sides of your paper, right? As parallel as you can. And my technique, I talked about this before, you can line up your ruler with either side of your paper. Then I just kind of slide it without moving it, right, one way or the other. Just kind of keep it straight up and down, move it to that dot, and then make my nice vertical line. Then we need horizontal lines. We're making a rectangle. So make 2 horizontal lines to complete that back wall. And delete the lines that you don't need inside the back wall, but leave your vanishing point. You're going to be using that a lot. Don't get rid of it. Okay, most furniture, very important what I'm saying up at the top. Most furniture can be made by starting with a cube. Right? You can make once you have your cube in place, you can make a sofa, you can make a dresser, you can make just about any piece of furniture, a chair. They can all start with that cube. So in the bottom left corner of your drawing, I want you to make a rectangle. Okay? Notice it doesn't touch the edge of your paper, it's inside a little bit. And it just kind of goes to that corner of that diagonal line, right? Just fits that bottom left corner, just sort of hits that diagonal line in the bottom left. And try and get it as square as you can. Now, what are we using? Perspective lines, right? Your perspective lines always go to the vanishing point. So from those three corners, top left, top right, bottom right, and remember these, you're going to erase parts of your perspective lines that you don't need. So kind of lightly, right, draw your line from those corners to your vanishing point. Now we need to complete our box, complete that cube. So you're going to draw a vertical line on the right side right there. And notice how it's hitting, right? It starts right at the bottom line of that back wall. So that's where you should be starting your line, and then just draw it right up until it hits that other perspective line. And that completes that side of your cube. Now it's still open on top, so we have to complete that as well. So now you're going to draw that horizontal line, and that completes the top of that box right there. Right? So now we have a complete cube. Right? Those ends are closed off. We have our perspective lines, which are aligned with the corner of our cube. And we have a nice three-dimensional cube. And that's what we're going to start with to build our furniture. Okay, now we're going to divide the box. We want to make this into two pieces of furniture. So we're going to divide the box into two equal sections. So we're going to add a vertical line on the side and then a horizontal line on the top. And if it's angled, either of these lines are angled, then they're not horizontal and they're not vertical. Right? You know what a diagonal line looks like. Right? These should be horizontal and vertical. Okay? Everybody has that. Now we're going to draw a vertical line up from the top of the box. See it on that left side over there? Right? You just want it to go up. It's a little bit more than halfway from the bottom to the top of our paper. That's where it ends. And this is going to be a mirror on the back of our dresser. That's what we're beginning to make. And what do we need? We need a perspective line, right? We have to have everything in perspective. So from that top part where that line ended, right, just draw your perspective line right over to the vanishing point. Again, lightly, it's a guideline, right? So you can draw it lightly so you can erase the part that you don't need. And then bring a vertical line down, right where those cabinets meet. Right, the center of that cube, see that horizontal line comes right over there. Then you're going to draw a nice vertical line, and that completes that shape up there. And that's the back of your mirror. And then erase the guidelines that you don't need. Now, mirror, we want it to look like it has a frame to it, and that usually has thickness. So you're going to draw vertical and diagonal lines inside the mirror. And again, those are going to be perspective lines. The top and bottom line inside that frame, you're going to have, those are going to go to the vanishing point, and then erase what you don't need. Okay, a couple more perspective lines. We're creating divisions. We're going to create drawers in these two cabinets, and we need to divide them up. So you're going to draw two evenly spaced lines that go to the vanishing point. And go ahead and erase what you don't need. And then you're going to add a vertical line. Now we're going to divide that cabinet, the width of the cabinet from one end to the other, with a vertical line. So go ahead and just measure visually, right, the distance from one end to the other, and try and find that center, and then add in your vertical line. Now we're going to split that. We need to put some knobs on our drawers for our dresser. So we're going to add in two vertical lines, kind of in the center of each of those areas. And that's going to mark, those are going to be guidelines for where the knobs on your dresser drawers will go. And then add the dots. And there you have the knobs right in place. So now it looks like we have 6 drawers in our dresser. And again, erase the guidelines that you don't need. Right? So now we just have the knobs. Okay, now in the back, we're going to make shelves. So we added those perspective lines in that went all the way to that back, through that back cabinet, but now we need to show where those end. And in order to make them look like shelves, we have to add horizontal lines. So right there, you can see those 3. It's just very short. Just make sure that they're horizontal, not diagonals. Right? They need to meet that definition, right? A horizontal line, not a diagonal line. They're very different. And there's your finished bookcase with the shelves. So now we need to leave a little bit of space between our dresser and our bookcase. You know, they can be pushed close together, but we want to show that division. So we're going to add another vertical line and a horizontal line a little bit further along, right? It's kind of cutting into our bookshelf there. So go ahead and add those in now. And then you're going to erase the line that you don't need there in between our dresser and our bookshelf. And it's kind of like the reverse method. You're actually making this look like a rectangle on the end, right? So you get rid of those in between perspective lines and then just add in a little tiny vertical and a little tiny horizontal at the bottom. And now it looks just like a bookshelf. So now we're going to make a bed on the right side. And the bottom right corner of the bed is on the diagonal line that forms the right edge of the floor. That's very important. You don't want your furniture floating into the walls. Okay, so it needs to meet those corners. And it actually gives you a measurement here, and you don't have to measure it exactly. If you can, that's great, but you can just measure it visually. So the bottom of your box should be about 3 inches wide, and it should be about 1.5 inches tall. And this is a rectangle showing the end of your bed. Now you're going to draw those guidelines, perspective lines, to the vanishing point. And then you're going to erase any lines that are inside those guidelines, the back wall, the bottom edge of the right wall, because it's not going to be transparent, your bed, right? It's going to be solid, and you're not going to be able to see through it. And this will be the last frame for this PowerPoint. And this is where we're using a vertical line to draw the side of the bed. Notice that it ends before it touches that back wall. Again, you don't want it floating into that back wall. And then we're using a vertical line to show, right? We're just making a cube again and showing where that cube